Welcome to Manager Tools. This week, don't throw a blanket over your team. The questions this cast answers are, how do I handle problem behavior? Does it work to generalize feedback? Do general negative comments motivate people?
You may not know Manager Tools has provided executive coaching since our inception. Yet, executive coaching for Manager Tools has been relatively limited due to the unavailability of our founder, Mark Horstman, who now has the time to devote to executives. Since Mark and Mike have stepped down from day-to-day management of Manager Tools, Mark now has more time to devote to coaching clients. If you're interested in being coached by Mark, email us at maggie@manager-tools.com to talk about whether or not this option would be right for you. All right, Kate, this is a good topic. I mean, this is I'm going to say a fun topic.
Yeah.
I'm not going to call it's about negative feedback, but it's kind of about negative feedback. That is, we know firsthand because we go on site and we work with managers and we train them that most managers struggle with, more specifically, negative feedback. And that means it seems easier when we notice someone's not performing, just make a general comment to the entire team. And at Manager Tools, we'd call this throwing a blanket over your team. It doesn't work. And we're going to talk today about why.
So 3 parts to our content today, or 3 sections, if you will. First, some simple examples. Second, why it doesn't work. And third, what to do instead.
Yeah, exactly. Now, some examples to start. That is, these behaviors display themselves in a few different ways. There's not just one generic way of throwing a blanket over your team. There are a few kinds of ways. And when we teach managers about feedback at our Effective Manager conferences, we talk all about how this is an ineffective technique. And usually when we talk about it at our conferences, we're doing it in line with an actual scenario or an example. And we've found that giving examples or scenarios where this might occur can be helpful because sometimes, I'm not going to say oftentimes, but kind of oftentimes, this is where managers realize that they've actually used it themselves.
Yeah. And of course, it's kind of a logical approach.
Yeah, it's natural. Is that the right way of saying? I don't know. It falls out of our mouths is what I'm saying. It just happens accidentally sometimes.
Yeah, I think if something happened and then you're thinking about it and it applies to a group, it wouldn't be outside of the norm for you to then mention it in front of the group.
Totally.
And so it's something that you would do, even though it's probably something that's best to shy away from in terms of like just adapting your behavior for your team. The classic example is that you've just started a meeting and one of your directs walks in a few minutes late. This direct's probably been late many times. Okay.
As they do.
And they do. We get into this a lot. I just talked about this yesterday at one of our events about lateness happens. And a lot of times when we're discussing it with attendees, they react pretty emotionally to the idea of someone being late to a meeting.
For sure.
Which is a bit shocking to me because I find that people are very often late. And so to me, if it's so emotional, why would people continue to be late? So it's confusing. And okay, the director comes in a few minutes late. It's happened before. So at the end of the meeting, in order to make an example of him, you say to the whole team, just one more thing, y'all. We all need to be on time. If we can't be on time to meetings, we're going to start missing deadlines too. Okay, that's it. Have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, exactly. Like in passing, throw someone under the bus. That can happen. And that is, as Kate said, the classic example. That's where we find it happens often. There's also the project example. That is, you're reviewing one of your team's projects with the subset of the people on your team who have project tasks assigned to them. And you're showing on your screen, it could be a Zoom meeting, you could have it up on a screen in the room in which you are, and you're showing your status board, right? That project status board, where are we at on our deliverables, what's due, who are the owners. Generally, these tend to look kind of spreadsheet-esque, I'm going to say.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they also can be Gantt charts, right? They can be other project status graphic packages, but it's that general product status tracking site, we're going to call it. And those tracking sites tend to show that there are tasks who aren't due yet. They're in the future. They tend to be white or colorless in terms of their appearance. There are tasks that are completed, which tend to be green. And there are things that are coming new or due within a relatively short period of time, usually about 48 hours. Those tend to be yellow or amber. And then, of course, there's tasks that are red. And that is, they are past due tasks.
Right.
And we do
one of these.
We do. We have generally one of these. You might have heard this, folks. We've got a podcast called The Manager Tools Work Management Spreadsheet, where we go over in the podcast our example of essentially the tracking site we use. And we do share with you our actual tracking site. It's one of our most popular podcasts. It's in our Hall of Fame. If y'all are interested, you can leverage it. You can use that tool as well if you're interested. Okay, back to that. You are in this meeting. You're sharing your screen. Everyone can see all the status of all the things that are happening. And as you look at the spreadsheet, your sense is there are far too many red fields. Way too much stuff is overdue. And you see quickly that the project is in trouble and you want to motivate your team manager. So you say, hey, folks, there's a lot of red up there. We've got a problem and we need to get back on track. Mm-hmm. That's the project example.
Yeah. To some extent, I think in our minds, when we do it the first couple of times, without understanding the implications of it, we're making an aside, a casual aside. Yeah. It's a stream of consciousness kind of.
Comment in passing. Yeah.
Right. I see this thing. Here's a comment about it. Much in the way that you do when you're driving and you see, it's just like, oh, I see this thing. My mouth says that thing. So there's also the bad news example that's pretty common where you've just gotten off the phone with your boss and he's told you got problems with your team's submitted response plans to the recent engagement survey results, which we've been talking about a lot here in this particular stream of Manager Tools podcast. About the engagement survey, he says that there are entire sections unaddressed, and several people use the same wording in some of the areas, showing that they didn't really take the time to understand their own results. He says that he wants you to report back by the end of the day, and it's 3:30.
Oh, yeah, it always is 3:30. It's usually Friday. But
that would be delightful. That sounds wonderful. So in response to this, you sent an urgent Slack to everyone asking them to join you on an immediate Zoom call to discuss it because it is the Friday where most people are working from home. Yay, double yay, triple yay. Once most people are there, you give them the news. Hey, just got some bad news from my boss. He says our responses to the engagement survey are terrible. There are areas we didn't respond to, and apparently we used each other's wording in different parts of it. That looks bad. I need a note from each of you before you quit work about when you're going to correct your response documents.
Yeah, exactly. So just to kind of get your brain juices flowing, those are some simple examples of this ineffective blanket throwing technique. And you may or may not have recognized this in your own managerial behaviors, but you probably have a recollection of being on the receiving end of one of these. It is not uncommon. So let's learn why you shouldn't throw that blanket as a manager.
Yeah. So it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And
that's a good reason why not to do it, but sure.
Before we get to that, because it never works, no matter what, it doesn't work. We should acknowledge the fact that there are reasons why it happens. It's the thing, right? It's simple. Managers are thinking that they're going to avoid a later conversation
time savings
by taking the opportunity now. If I mention it now, maybe somebody will pick up the ball and solve this problem. And it's essentially a way of mentioning it. And that way the message will get across to the person who needs to get into gear,
Yeah.
right? Like, I'm going to say this here in this forum where everyone is. And because the person who needs to fix it is here, ostensibly they'll hear it. And therefore, later I won't have to say to them directly, dude, you should have gotten your act together.
Right.
So it's again, logical, as we mentioned. Logical.
It's logical. It's logical. And in terms of our doing this, even though it's in front of everybody, which most of us know probably isn't a great idea, the message is still delivered. Again, to Kate's point, we're trying to save time. Now, I would also say there are some of those managers, though, that think it's a bit of a shaming technique for the late direct. In the first scenario, anyway, in the meeting scenario, that is, it almost feels like, hey, if I say this in front of a group of people, there'll be more weight. There'll be more heft to it. They'll really get the picture and it'll change because, to Kate's point, these late people are usually chronically late and you feel like you need a little bit of weight behind you. So by giving those negative performance comms in front of a group of people, you think, oh, surely they'll get the picture now.
I do also think that this comes a little bit from, for many of us, for myself, having made this mistake in the past, largely as a function of simply mentioning status, right? Like, like mentioning status in a meeting. I have imagined to myself, gosh, if I was the person who was read, for example, it would have been out of forgetfulness, some benign negligence. And so if I heard that in a meeting and I saw it was my name, I would absolutely stop the rest of my day and fix the problem.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of us could imagine us doing that.
Yeah.
And therefore, oh my gosh, whoops, and go and try and fix it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a forum in which to speak about some of this, like sometimes you just you think you're being casual, or some people maybe think, oh gosh, maybe I could influence them by airing their dirty laundry.
Right. That's not what we say to ourselves, but it's what we do.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So we're not, it's kind of interesting. Well, all we're trying to say, y'all, is we understand that you're not doing it necessarily with a really nefarious reason.
Correct.
It could be completely benign. It could be something you didn't even realize was a problem. It could be something that you thought would work.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work. It doesn't work for all kinds of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It doesn't work. And one of our favorite podcasts that we talk about a lot, the middleman test, helps us. We can perform kind of a middleman test analysis.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is to say, we can ask, how would you feel if your boss did this to you?
Yeah, exactly. If you've not listened to the Middleman podcast, I don't know. Is it in the Hall of Fame, Kate? I don't know. If it's not, it definitely should be. It's a really good cast that I refer to a lot. Mm-hmm. If you're a manager, you've got directs, but you also are someone else's direct. That is, you're a middleman between your boss and your directs. And when you're thinking about what to do with your directs, it oftentimes is beneficial to first ask yourself how you would receive it if your boss did it to you. Hence, determining whether or not your behavior is a good idea because, hey, if this were me, how would I feel about it? So then ask yourself of what we're discussing today, the blanket technique. How would you feel if your boss, instead of having a brief conversation with you later, chose to call you out in front of everyone in the room? Like, seriously, would you find that motivational? Is that a thing? Would you find that embarrassing? As some of us probably would. What about the other people in the room? Do you think if you were called out in front of all your colleagues would find it motivating to them? And what if you were in the room and you were on time, or you had done your full engagement response, or all your project tasks were green, and a colleague of yours was called out in front of you? How would that affect your behavior?
Well, I'd also just be frustrated that I didn't get credit for the stuff that I did.
Right?
Which I feel like happens a lot. There's way more input about the stuff that doesn't get done than there is validation for the stuff that does get done, especially on really small, repetitive, like daily things. Like my classic example is always timesheets. I used to work at a place where timesheets were a really big deal. and by that I mean they had to be filled out and it was incredibly important information. The behavior around timesheets was neglectful,
At
perhaps.
best.
At best, yeah. I almost said negligent and then I took a step back. And a part of it is I think that there wasn't a lot of validation for if you've done it or not. There was only churn around it if it hadn't been done.
Right.
And this is a similar situation. The blanket technique doesn't work because it embarrasses everyone in the room, because professionals know, hey, you're not supposed to like call people out in front of other people. That's not a professional behavior. It doesn't work for that reason because it's embarrassing. It doesn't work because the person you're talking to loses respect for you for calling them out in front of other people. They're not pleased with that. It doesn't work because everybody knows it's pretty lazy. It's a lazy approach to trying to get the problem solved.
Like literally, you could take 30 seconds after this meeting.
Yeah. And it's not just, it's lazy and it's using your role power. It's just using role power to try to influence a person. It doesn't work because the people who were on time or did their chores, were on top of their responsibilities, felt like they got painted with the same brush as everybody who messed up.
Yeah, everyone got in trouble at the same time.
Yeah, I didn't get credit for doing my stuff. And it especially doesn't work because the people who didn't fail know, hey, I didn't fail. So it really demotivates those people because they're not getting credit. And like, hey, if I'm not going to get credit, why would I keep working really hard at it? I think the thing that always resonates with me the most in terms of this kind of conversation is that the people who messed up, they feel like it's not specific to them.
Oh,
they don't actually attribute it to themselves.
Oh, that is, I talk about that all the time at our conferences. You don't realize how many times you, as a manager, say things in passing, just say things to the group. They're really targeted at a single person, but you said it to the group. And then the one person in the room, the only person in the room that you're meaning to target with that statement is the exact same person who, when they hear the information, thinks, oh, this ain't about me. She knows I got a thing. No, she knows I have a thing every Thursday morning. So this isn't about me. This is obviously about somebody else. And that's not true. That's the person you're meaning to talk to, but your unwillingness, laziness, whatever it is, you're not talking to that specific person creates a situation where the only person you're trying to talk to, they're not listening to you. And finally, it doesn't work because it's not positive-minded. It's about a mistake. And for those people that did it right, it's about someone else's mistake. So, feedback, which we talk about often, is about the future. Well, calling somebody out in front of a group of people, not about the future.
We've got another virtual effective manager conference coming up starting August 14th. It's 4 sessions. They're broken into one-on-ones, feedback, coaching, and delegation. So you get to learn the entire Manager Tools Trinity with the benefit of being online so that you don't have to travel. And as well, you'll be able to learn these things in smaller bits so that you can really focus on your workday. So if you've thought about taking the Effective Manager and can't seem to get away for a full day, starting on August 14th, we're hosting some virtual Effective Manager training sessions, and we'd love for you to come and sign up. manager-tools.com/training. See you soon.
So, what to do instead? This is the good part.
Yeah. We can help you with what you should be doing. What to do, of course, is what you would have wanted done for you or to you.
Middleman test.
You'd want to not be called out in front of your peers if you were late.
Mm-hmm.
You'd want to be talked to individually about what you did or didn't do on the engagement response. You'd want your individual performance on the project task addressed directly, one-on-one with praise or positive feedback.
Exactly. And the same goes for the people on your team who performed as you would want them to. If you're on time, you want to be told you're on time. Because you were on time. Not just because somebody else was late, but because it's really good to be on time. And you could probably do without positive feedback, but you certainly don't want to be told how good it was to be on time just because someone else messed up.
Yeah.
That doesn't feel like much of a reward at all.
It's not, right? It's just not.
It's just not. Oh, you're the best of the worst. Congratulations. Nice work today. Like, no,
Yeah.
not cool. No one likes that. And I mean, if you're in the project meeting, talk about the timeliness one, but if you're in the project meeting and you're green, you're probably thinking your boss is wasting time and everyone else's time who was green as well. I mean, sure, the boss saved themselves a few seconds at the end of the meeting, but everyone else in the room, time was completely wasted hearing this piece of commentary to the person who didn't do it right when it's not of benefit to anybody else. You're probably also pretty well justified in wondering when you're going to be given someone else's tasks to do to get everybody back on track, right? You're green and someone else isn't. You know what? You know you're good at this, Kate. You're clearly able to stay green. Okay, so what we're going to do is why don't you do Sarah's stuff for her so that she can get back on track. No one wants that. It's enough. Yeah.
Well, it feels a little bit like a large portion of my career.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
This is part of, I think, why good performers get cynical.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yes.
If you do your work professionally and you're given more work, and especially when you're given work that is the work of those people who didn't do theirs in a timely fashion.
Oh, thank you for the reward.
And didn't tell anybody, hey, I won't be able to do it, and here's why. Then it really honestly feels like, at my worst moments, it feels like, why do other people work here?
Yeah.
Not here at Manager Roles, in my previous places. Why does anybody else work here if I'm going to do it all?
Right. And why do I keep doing what I'm doing when it's clear I'm just cleaning everything up? Like, what's even the purpose?
If the reward for not doing work is being given less work to do, then perhaps I should be not doing my work.
Right? I mean, it's a strategy. It seems to work for some people. That's all I'm saying.
Right. So it can be really demotivating, I think, to be presented with that. Because even if you're self-motivated, and I do believe there's a lot of very self-motivated professionals out there. And
agreed.
I have to say our team is incredibly self-motivated. They're at their desks early. Not that I want them to be there early. I just see that they're self-motivated, and that's wonderful. Like, I really find that valuable about our team, that it's hard when you work from home, right? It can be really hard to say, I need to be at my desk. Yeah. And like to get up to your desk at the same time every day requires personal discipline and motivation. And if you have that and it gets chipped away at by poor behavior on the manager's part, or, by other people on the team, it can be really tough, I think, to maintain it over time and, keep at it. So it's in the same, like if we go back to our example, right? If you handled your engagement survey response effectively, you'd certainly not want to receive a Slack saying you hadn't done it well enough and you needed to go and fix it right now. Frankly, you're probably thinking that your boss, having thrown this blanket over everyone, will spend his time on getting everyone up to speed rather than looking at each and realizing, oh, hey, mine was really good. Again, lack of credit for what you did right.
Right. So all that to say, under this section, what to do instead. What to do instead is pretty easy in this case. Give positive feedback to the people who were on time, who were on task, who met the standard, and give negative feedback individually, one-on-one, to the people who were not on time or on task or did not meet the standard. So in the case of somebody being late, say nothing during the meeting. Wait till after the meeting's over and either ask that person to stick around afterward and give them some feedback, some quick, polite, positive-minded, future-minded feedback, or talk to them later in the day, or talk to them at the one-on-one, or give them an individual piece of negative feedback instead of doing it in front of the group.
If it's the project meeting example, Take the time to drill down into each task. When things are green, thank the owner. For those which are yellow, ask the owner their likelihood of becoming green or going red. If they say, hey, it's going to go red, ask them when it will be done. When will it be green, completed? If someone owns a red task, ask them what the problem is and when they will complete that task, and make some notes. Write that stuff down, follow up. Give positive feedback later to those people who are green and negative feedback to those who are not. And if y'all remember, if you range back to when you learned about feedback, you have about a week.
Yeah.
Okay. You have about a week until, it's really expired. So you don't have to do it today. You don't have to immediately call them up. You could do it in the one-on-one. You could wait a little bit. Now, if it's urgent enough that you felt it was urgent to say it in the meeting, perhaps you shouldn't wait a week. And I think that oftentimes managers will say to me, okay, I don't have time to call them today. And then I always wonder, well, then why did you feel it was so urgent to say something in the meeting?
You had time to waste everyone else's time and do it in front of everyone else. So it appears you do have time.
I think you're just opting into the option that is easier for you.
Totally. You're absolutely right.
Not the best approach.
And if prior to today you thought it was effective, let's face it, why wouldn't you?
Yeah, totally.
Because of all those things. But we all know better now. Okay, so good. In the case of the engagement survey responses, the bad news, you're going to have to review each person's response, which, let me be clear, you should have done already before your boss ever saw it and had to call you to correct y'all on it. But we're past that now. It is too late. It is what it is. So after you reviewed all these things, then meet with each individual who's submitted their responses briefly and tell them what sections they need to improve. Give negative feedback when it's appropriate and positive feedback to the people who've appropriately met the standard.
Simple solutions, positive and negative feedback on an individual basis for problems that do warrant attention and time, quick time, right? Feedback does not take very, very long, because throwing a blanket over your whole team just because some people didn't perform doesn't work. Not only is it not effective, but you wouldn't like it if it was done to you. So it's easier, sure. That doesn't make it right or effective. You're just shielding the people who didn't meet the standard and undermining those who did.
Which doesn't sound like a good approach.
It's the exact opposite of effective management.
Yeah.
We'd like to encourage you to do it differently.
You bet. All right. Very cool.
Thanks, y'all. That's it for this week, y'all. We'll be back next week with a new topic. Bye.
Bye.